So we are watching a model of Jerusalem of the late Second Temple period. Let's say roughly the last 100 years or so of Jewish Jerusalem before the rebellion and the destruction by the Romans in the year 70. We're going to have a few stops along the city. The model was originally made over 60 years ago by Professor Michael Avi Yonah, who is an archaeologist and an historian, a classical historian. And the scale of the model, if you put a person there, they're going to be shorter than a match. Okay, so just to know how if you put a person there in relation to the scale, the person would be about, let's say, 2.5 centimeters, okay, about an inch tall. We're standing east of Jerusalem. So which ridge is this? Mount of Olives, which is higher up than Jerusalem, okay, because we're over 800 meters above sea level when Jerusalem, as we said before, the temple is roughly 747 or 745 above sea level, some say 735. Anyway, we're higher up. And how do you call the northern peak of the Mount of Olives ridge?
Mount Moriah.
On the Mount of Olives. If you go to the northernmost point where the Hebrew University is, how do you call the mountain? Mount Scopus. Why Scopus? Because you can scope over. Everybody who came from the east, from the Jordan Valley, this was the first chance to scope over Jerusalem. And Mount Scopus is part of Mount of Olives ridge. Now, right across and down from us, we see the temple. And we've seen a few other demonstrations of the temple earlier in the morning. You see the temple court, which is not an exact square or even not a rectangle. Each wall is slightly different in length than the others. The longest is the western wall, 480 meters. North side, the eastern wall is 460. The northern, apparently, is 315, and the southern, 280. So 315 north, 280 south, 460 east, and 488 west. All this gives us roughly around 140 dunams or 36 acres, which is the size of roughly 20 football fields put together. It's a huge esplanade. It's the largest esplanade in the ancient world. Larger than other places, larger than Athens or Rome. Esplanade, not a platform. Okay. Or holy precincts, you can choose.
Sorry, the height is about this.
I said the length of the external wall. Okay, now in the middle, you see the temple. Where does it open to? Which direction?
West, east.
East. But if it opens east, and we have the temple itself has 3 rooms, and the innermost room is the Holy of Holies, then the westernmost room is the holiest. This is part of the reason that the western wall became holy in later periods.
The closest to the Holy of Holies.
Exactly. Okay? It's closer to the Holy of Holies than any other external wall. And also it was the only wall accessible from within the city, from a safe area. We have safe access. Okay, you could have come to the east, but this is outside of the city. You don't know what dangers you may meet. Same goes for the south. Now, the temple has an outer court, referred to as the ladies or the women court. You see that in the corners of this court, the rectangle closer to us, there are chambers. There's a whole discussion in the Mishnah, in ancient Jewish sources, which chambers serve for what. Some to prepare the wood, some to prepare the oil, and one of the rabbis say, hey, that one, I don't remember anymore, okay, after the destruction, which is quite nice that he admits it. Now, you have the temple itself. Who goes inside the temple?
Only the high priest.
Only the priests. And inside the Holy of Holies, only the high priest, and only when?
Atonement
3 times a year.
Only on the Day of Atonement. The holiest day of the year, the holiest person in the system, on the holiest place on the universe. the stone of foundation, where the world was founded from, where Adam was created by God, where Abraham brings Isaac for the binding, Kedah. So all the beginnings were linked to the stone in the Holy of Holies. Now, those of you, I hope most of you can make it. If you look at the outer court, there's a set of semi-circular stairs. You see a set of stairs
Yes,
leading
yes.
to a gate. We have 15 stairs. They are known as the Ma'alot. Ma'alot is ancient Hebrew for stairs, but also in the book of Psalms, we have Shir HaMa'alot, the Song of Ascent. Okay, so we have 15 on which ancient traditions tell us the Levites would stand, and everyone who has a sacrifice or a libation, it's not always an animal, it could be a plant, it could even be oil or liquid in certain cases. Everyone would have to bring it. You would come up the stairs, through the gate. You're not allowed in the temple, but you will hand it over to the priest. Now, between the stairs and the door to the temple, there is an altar. And this is where everything would be done. You give it to the priest. Sometimes you get some things back, some parts of the animal, for example. Sometimes you don't, and you go around. Between the stairs and the door to the temple itself. Okay, so a regular person can go in the court around the temple, but not in the building itself.
To the sanctum.
Pardon?
To the sanctum.
Exactly, not to the sanctum itself. Okay, now the whole mountain is surrounded with colonnades, okay, with corridors of pillars, and the southern one is named the Royal Basilica, or the Royal Stoa. Now this is the last place where you can buy the things that you need to bring to the temple. And there are mainly two things. What do you bring to the temple with you 2,000 years ago? One, sacrifice. And second,
Your prayer.
everybody brings half a shekel to the maintenance of the temple. Now we're told that on purpose it was set that even the poorest people could bring this. We know of communities from abroad sending the money over. And sometimes you have Jews in Asia Minor, in Greece, in Rome, in North Africa. And we know of a couple of cases where a local ruler would say, hey, you guys live in my city. How come you send your money to a foreign city? We need it for our own city for our maintenance. And the Roman emperor would defend the right of the Jews once a year to send this sum to the maintenance of the Jewish temple, because there's only one Jewish temple in the whole world. So in the Royal Basilica you could exchange your money or last chance to buy a sacrificial animal, or you do it in the shops that you will see with Oren when you go to Davidson Center. Now, sorry? The Basilica because of the architectural shape. Right. Okay, now, imagine that you come from a small village. Can you bring your own sacrificial animal all the way to Jerusalem? Let's say you come from the Galilee.
You
from
can, but
Caesarea.
it's very difficult.
No. Okay, why? Because whatever you bring to God as sacrifice has to be perfect. And on the way to Jerusalem, if there is the tiniest scratch in the animal, or maybe a few, I don't know, feathers or hairs lost, you cannot sacrifice it to God. So you have to buy it in Jerusalem. And what does that mean for the price? Okay, but you have no other choice. And we have stories about rabbi, for example, a rabbi called Rabban Gamliel, who one day saw that the price of the doves, okay, that's the smallest sacrifice, a simple bird, the price of the doves was so high that poor people couldn't buy it. So he said, okay, he bought 500 doves, and what happened to the price all around? Okay, on purpose. So that's part of it. And we know of Jesus fighting the animal sellers and the money. Why fight the money changers?
Temple of God.
Well, first because they were making a profit over the backs of the poor pilgrims. This is because you could not bring any currency to the temple. There was only one coin, one currency that could be trusted economically, and this was the Tyrian shekel, the shekel of the city of Tyre, today in southern Lebanon. Because this was the most trustworthy economy in the whole area. So it doesn't matter even if you came from this country. or even from Jerusalem itself, you would still have to change your currency in order to bring your donation, your half shekel, to the temple. Another interesting thing is the Tyrian shekel was not minted in Jerusalem. And the symbol, the city of Tyre is linked with the god Heracles. And the symbol of the city of Tyre and Heracles was an eagle. Now, Judaism does not like, as we say, graven image. No animals of humans or animals. But this was an exception because this is the money for the temple. Okay, so the Tyrian shekel was used. At a certain point, we're not sure, but there is one scholar, the late Yaakov Mishorer, who says that in the last 15 or 20 years of the Second Temple, just before the destruction, he sees a slight difference in the coins, and he believes that they were minted in Jerusalem. That Jerusalem now, after Herod and after Agrippa, Jerusalem itself became an economic power, and the Tyrian shekel was minted here in Jerusalem. So that's Mishor's view. Okay, you got your donation, you got your sacrificial animal, which by the way is a sacrifice for the whole family, not only for yourself. What else do you need to know to do before you can go up to the mountain, to the temple?
Purify yourself.
Purify yourself.
Yes,
As we
ritual
said,
bath.
all around the mountain, there are dozens and dozens of mikvaot, ritual baths. They have a certain, there's a limitation to the volume, you have certain rules. And by the way, we said a mikveh is not for physical cleanliness, it's for ritual cleansing. When can you no longer use a mikveh? Now remember, a mikveh, you cannot draw the water because it's pure water, and we have only 4 months of rain every year. When does the mikveh go out of use? One source tells us when you put a branch in the mikveh, it stands by itself. Now, how can it stand by itself?
It's pretty dirty.
Okay, so again, it's not about the dirt, it's about the ritual cleansing. And there's also other, when you put a branch and it stands by itself, which tells us that the mikveh could be maybe with 10 centimeters of mud and still good for ritual cleansing. Okay, now there are other ways, I'm not going to go into that.
It's still good.
Now, one more thing. How do you go into the mikveh?
On the way
By the
back.
stairs, and you go totally naked.
Yes.
So you cannot mix men and women. To be fair, we don't know what they did at the times. Maybe there were different hours or different days, like they do today in the shores for religious Jews. Okay, you have separation. Maybe there were certain mikvahs for men, others we just don't know. But what we do know is that a few mikvahs, not many, but all around the country, we find a few mikvahs that have a separation between just in the middle of the stairs going down. So they're not to separate men from women, they're to separate those going in. And they're still impure from those going out after they dipped in the mikveh, and they are pure. Okay? And of course you don't want to touch, if you're pure, you don't want anyone who's impure to touch you, because then you're gonna have to go to the mikveh again. Now imagine it is Pesach or Sukkot or Shavuot, one of the 3 big festivals, and there's a whole line to each and every mikveh. Okay, and most people were born in our area, so yeah, I just need a question, just allow me to go in. Okay, so don't touch. And another beautiful thing, we have everything coming together from archaeology and from various texts. We know from the Mishnah, one of the tractates, says that if you find a vessel on the way to the mikveh, how do you know if it's pure or impure? The solution of the rabbis was whether it's on the way down or on the way up. Okay, this is how you're going to assume if the vessel that was dropped by chance is pure or impure. Now, another beautiful thing is, except for I said we have these partitions carved in a few places. We find them in Jerusalem, we found them in the Hebron mountain, and also in Jericho. All these places are places where families of priests used to live, and priests have to be pure. Another beautiful source we have is from the 2nd century of the Common Era, a papyrus found in Egypt called the Papyrus of Oxyrhynchus. And it describes Papyrus of Oxyrhynchus, it's the name of the place.
Oxyrhynchus.
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 Oxyrhynchus
It
10.
describes a discussion between Jesus and one of the Pharisees, one of the Jewish wise men. And Jesus tells him, I went to Mikveh David, I went down one way and went up a different way. Okay, so we have a Jewish source, an early Christian source, and archaeology all showing us the separation in the mikveh, and they were found as well. Now I look down, we're going to go down in a minute, on the right. You see what we call an extramural quarter outside of the walls, of the original walls, and you're going to hear of it in 2 minutes. Then you have, just in the corner, the right corner of the temple, the north corner, you see the fortress,
Yes.
Antonia Fortress, and we were right underneath it when we reached the pool today in the tunnels. Okay? And so, Karen will be Antonia. We're going to speak of it. Sorry. Very close. The Eke home is very close, and if I go straight from the temple further out, I reach the area that is today Jaffa Gate. Tower of David. We're going to stand there and see what we see. And everything on the left, the area closer to us, is all the way down, is the city of David, the biblical nucleus of Jerusalem. Then you see simple houses clustered together going up the hill, and on the top of the hill you see a very nicely done quarter with a lot of air and space and big courts. It's a rich place. This is the place of the priests and the aristocracy and the VIPs.
Where is it?
Okay, just across
You can
outside
realize.
the temple and to the left.
You can see the new
Area is
houses.
a lot nicer than the houses on the slope.
حسام مستشري من زمان.
Okay. We'll stand next to it and speak of it closer. Now, another thing, when we are in modern Jerusalem, if you look to the right, you see the concave roof. This is the new National Library. It's going to open in 2-3 months. You can now come and everything. To the left of it, you see the big, ugly buildings with the many windows. These are the government buildings. It's part of the governmental area. This is the campus of the Hebrew University of Givat Ram, of the life sciences and some other things. Okay. So you see, as you enter Jerusalem from the west, you have the government area, you have the educational area, and you have the museums area, which is actually part of the educational/cultural. Israel Museum, Bible Land Museum, the National Archaeology Museum is about to open in a few months, just down from us. So this is as you enter the city to show you, okay, the city boasts who rules it. We're going to go down and you're going to hear about the third wall, then we're going to continue, make a few stops along the city.